What's that? Hello, and welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. We are here live on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am your co-host, Judy Forder, and I am here actually only a mile away from my friend and co-host, Miss
Kris Burke. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. I said that because I am here in Vermont. I am from Pennsylvania, so I've been here for the week visiting. We did a workshop on Sunday we were very excited about. And I got to meet many of my student friends that I haven't seen, fellow students, in person. I got to meet them in person. So it's been an exciting time.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, it has. And let's say, remind everybody, if you like what we're doing here, please help us get the word out by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And before we go forward, I would like to give a little shout out, thank you, to Laura, Janice, Jen, Heather, Beth, and Karen, because you all consistently share our shows on Facebook. And I just wanted to thank you all.
Yay!
Yay! And we know how Kris feels about commenting. So if you're watching us live,
I live for comments.
she lives for comments. And even if you're watching the recorded show, we go back and look for comments as well. So please feel free to tell us how you're feeling, if the process is working for you, any comments, anything that's worked for you that you want to share with the audience too. You know, we don't claim to be experts of anything. We're just sharing from our experience and hoping it can help other people.
Right.
So that being said, our topic for today, imagining the new you.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this has been a process. You know, we cleaned out our closets. We took what worked for us. We started framing what that new life is going to look like. And now we're to the point where we need to start imagining what the new you looks like. And how do we go about that, Kris?
Yeah, how do we? It's really interesting because the new you, we would tend to think in our society that we are who we are, who we are, who we are, right? So that the person that we are today, the way we think about things, the way we feel about things, what we do, our kind of interactive patterns are what they are because of who we are. And actually, as we start to create new experiences for ourselves, we find that in order for us to have new experiences, the experiencer also has to shift, has to change. There has to be some change because as long as we continue to be who we've always been, we will continue to get what we've always gotten.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Now it's interesting when you and I were prepping for the show. We were like imagining the new you, blah 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 blah, and all I kept hearing is returning to origin.
Yes.
Returning to origin, and we've talked about this before. You know, with we aren't born into this lifetime apologizing for existing. We aren't born into this lifetime feeling like we're not enough. You know, we are born pure and clean energetically for the most part. For the most part.
Yes.
Things that come in with us.
Yeah.
But it is through experience that these, whether it's family beliefs and patterns, societal beliefs and patterns start piling on us and we lose the core of who we really are.
Yeah.
So the work that we've been doing with this show is about helping you peel the layers to get back to who's really in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that person believe? And what does that person want for the future? And what can you imagine your life and you looking like?
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And one of the things that comes up for me a lot during this process is that no matter how amazing the future I imagine is, and I've got a very active imagination, I love to imagine. So no matter how good that future is, I'm always going to imagine within the confines of what I already know. What I already know is possible, what fits within my belief system, right? Even though my belief system's pretty expansive from my perspective right now, right? As my perspective changes, I might find, oh, look, it was another level of a box, right? So I've found it really helpful to focus on not what you want on the outside of you so much as how do you want to feel in your skin? What is that feeling that you want to have? And because we know from our experience and from our ongoing exploration, right? Because we're all still working on it. So if you don't feel absolutely confident in that, well, join the club, right? So we just keep going. We find out that the outside world is going to automatically shift itself to match our internal feeling. So really, if we focus on that internal feeling, we like, I want to feel joyful. I'm focusing on joy. What is, bring me the joy opportunities. The joy opportunities will come and things can come up that you didn't even know brought you joy,
Mhm.
right? Until they're there and you try them and you're like, whoa, like the world had this in it all this time and I didn't even know about it.
Mhm.
So focusing on that experience opens up the door to us discovering things about ourselves that will delight us.
Mhm. Yeah, I started a couple months ago declaring I choose peace. I choose peace because we've talked a lot about resolving the conflict
Mm,
and being at peace with whatever decision we make. And that whole monkey mind of me, did I make the right decision? Did I make the right decision? When I say I choose peace, it's shifted that questioning
mhm.
because it's the decision that I've made and I'm at peace with that. And when it's time to reevaluate, I will. I give
Right.
myself that grace. And it's really changed everything
Mhm.
because in those peaceful moments, now that I invite and welcome more peace, it allows joy and
Yeah.
love to step through the door.
Right.
I felt like for me, it was really the key that
Mhm.
opened up the door to all those other things then coming. Because if when I don't have that peace, it's that monkey mind and the doubt and the beatings begin again and all that kind of stuff. And in that chaos and turmoil, it like clogs the door and doesn't let joy and love in.
That's that's absolutely, absolutely. That experience, that chaotic experience that is the absence of peace
Hmm.
or the opposite of peace, right? That's the battleground.
Hmm.
And so when we focus and make an absolute commitment, I'm staying with peace. I mean, it's amazing what kinds of things can happen in your world that in the past you realize, wow, I would have been completely blown away by this. And now I'm sailing through it peacefully at peace
Hmm.
in myself. And as I sail through it at peace with myself, guess what? The situation actually works better.
Yeah, absolutely. It allows people to show up differently too, if whatever it is involving other people.
Yes.
It has definitely shifted that whole platform, is the word I
Mm.
keep hearing. It's
Yeah.
shifted the whole platform to a place where when you show up peaceful, it invites others to take that breath and choose
Mhm.
peace too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm not sure if we've talked about how we talk to one another at an unconscious level energetically as well, right? So when we're together, and we're going to get to Jen's comment one sec. Oh, can you bring it back? Um, thank you. Yeah, that we're actually unconsciously talking. So when you're in a state of peace and other people around you, your unconscious is talking to their unconscious about how this peace thing's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
So Jennifer Clark says, imagining is the foundation for manifesting. If we don't first imagine, how can we manifest joy, abundance, whatever it is? Excellent point, Jennifer Clark.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly, that's such a great question. So, if we think about, like, let's think about manifesting joy. If we, or abundance is a better one. Let's say I imagine manifesting abundance and I want to get really clear. So, I'm like, okay, what does abundance look like? And I start thinking about things, right? Because usually we want abundance because we want more things in our lives. That's part of the human experience. So I might like, oh, the house, the this, the that. And then what instantly happens, which is interesting, at least in my experience, is that I'm imagining the house that this abundance represents to me. And then I compare it to the house that I currently have, and suddenly, oh, I'm right back in lack. Right? I'm wanting something. I'm in that position of wanting something and hoping that it's going to come. And for me, that's a buzzkill, and I'm right back in the battleground. Right? So this is a really subtle difference. For me, I found it helpful to focus on what is abundance going to feel like? Right? So abundance, I create that experience right here, right now. There's no lack. There's power. Right? I have the ability right here in this moment to imagine myself feeling at peace, without worry, unlimited, that I can decide what it is that I want to do and I can go do it, that I can see people in need and I can help them in the way that I'm guided to help them without restriction. And when I start thinking abundance experience thoughts, that lights me up. Whereas when I start thinking abundance uh,
Mater-
evidence,
material.
material, yeah,
Mhm.
then that puts me into a lack mindset. Oh, I've wanted that for so long. I- Yeah, that's just my experience. What about
Yeah,
you, Judy?
I feel like when back not too long ago, abundance was very much focused on money and have me. It wasn't so much a big house; it was being able to pay the monthly bills without stressing out and things like that. And you know, um, it's funny because when I think of a big house, that actually stresses me out because a lot more responsibility comes with a big house.
True.
So
Hmm.
yes, once I was able to shift to that feeling of abundance, what that began to mean to me was freedom.
Yeah.
A big house to me is a lockdown unless I can have a housekeeper and a chef and all kinds of people taking care of the grounds and all that kind of stuff. That's to me, I look at that and it's a lot more work.
Mm.
So yes, I took that shift from the material things and went more to what does it feel like to be free? To be free to help people in a manner that I want, to be free enough to go and do the things that I want to do. And then, I mean, here I am in Vermont traveling. It's, because before my knee jerk response was, I don't have the money for that.
Right.
I don't have the money for that. How can I help people? I don't have the money for that. I
Mm.
can't afford to donate my time because I can't afford to donate my time.
Mm.
I took that shift as, people before profit. People come first.
Mhm.
And I started serving in that manner. And as we've said before, abundance shows up in unlimited ways. Before, I was focused on financial abundance. Once I was able to knock those walls down and expand my mind and open my heart, abundance is showing up in so many different ways that I never even imagined.
Yeah. Yes, exactly the point.
Yeah.
Yes. It's when we stop limiting our idea of what should be happening, then there's freedom for so many things that are wonderful to come into our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny when we started, talking about this topic of imagining the new you. I will not sell you any type of delusional ideas that when I started this journey, I was like, oh, I can imagine what I'm going to, the experience that I'm going to have because I didn't have the knowledge and experience that I have now.
Right.
All I knew was I wanted people to treat me better. I
Hmm.
wanted people to respect me. I wanted people to be kind. I wanted to stop feeling like I had to beg people to like me or
Mm.
accept crumbs. We've talked about that in the past shows.
Mhm.
So, it was this whole, well, I want people to do this and I want people to do that, blah, 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 blah. And the next question was, do you do that for yourself?
Right.
Are you respectful to you? Are you kind to you? Do you move in the energy of integrity when you're doing things concerning yourself and making decisions that are best for you? And the
Mhm.
answer was a big fat no.
Yeah. 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 Really powerful. Um, Kindness is huge, and we were talking about this, yesterday, and it is. We decided that it really boiled down to if you just focus on being kind to yourself, then that will create this beginning internal environment that can start to spread, and it seems to spread kind of naturally. It's helpful to have support. So as things, come up, you can talk through them because a lot of the things that come up will be related to friends and family and situations that have been going on for a long time. And when that stuff comes up, you're not sitting there saying, "Am I being kind to myself and others?" Right? I mean, because you're just like, ah, you're losing you're losing your crap. You're on an emotional, tsunami wave. So it's helpful. I mean, it is that simple and that complicated
Mhm.
to just really start out by making an absolute commitment to yourself. If you really want change, if you really want to create a life that you love, and to find out who you are so that you can love you too, because that is the truth. You are the person that you're looking for.
Yeah.
You just at this moment can't see that really clearly. So if you're really committed to that path, then just make a commitment to yourself to be kind to yourself no matter what.
Yeah. And when we were milling this through yesterday, one of the first questions was, okay, well, what does that even look like? I've never been kind to myself before. How can I start doing it now? And the question is, how do you know if a person, we want people to be kind to us. How do we know if they're being kind to us? What does that look like to you for other people to
Yeah.
be, and that's where you start because the
Mhm.
behavior you would like, how you would like to be treated by others is how you first need to treat yourself.
Yes. Yes. And focus on how you feel because how do we ultimately know if people are being kind to us? Because we can feel it,
Mhm.
right? They say something to us. Does that feel kind? Or does that feel a little edgy?
Right.
A little porcupiney, or sometimes a knife in the backy, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's the reality of when we're talking to people, they can say exactly the same words with exactly the same facial expression, and it can be different levels of energetic, anything from petting the bunny rabbit to stabbing you in the back.
Yeah. Yeah. Backhanded compliments, passive aggressive behaviors and words, sarcasm, all those things. So
Mhm.
really think about who are the people that you feel the best around
Yeah.
and why? That for me, that was where a good place for me to start
Mhm.
because I had a mother who was not kind to herself,
Right.
and I always say my mother said all of the right things to her daughters, about being empowered and making your own money and not relying on what other people don't judge yourself based on what everybody else says. But yet she moved through her days not happy at all with the woman that she was.
Right.
And that's what I learned. I learned from how she treated herself. And I
Yeah.
got to be honest with you, that was a big motivator for me to do this work because I have a daughter
Mhm.
and I didn't want her to learn those behaviors the same way I did. So it was really important to me once I became aware of what was going on that I started to shift my relationship with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. Because we adopt the patterns, that our family has been handing down for generations, and we add our little, dimension to it, and we take a few things out. But basically, our family patterns are what they are. Because if you live that, those patterns, those ways of interaction, acting, those ways of, not just approaching life and one another, but also how do we handle celebrations? How do we handle tragedies? How do we handle simple things like mealtime and shopping? Are we collaborating? Is there grumbling? Are we competing and trying to knock another down? Or are we spending the time ask, in curiosity, asking one another, trying to get to know what is it like to be you?
Mhm.
Brother, mother, daughter, whoever. Um, and, those of you who are groaning right now, yeah, because right, that's not happening a lot, but we can choose for that to happen, and it
Mhm.
certainly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if we could pull up the map, I feel like it's time for the map.
Mhm.
If we could have that, Cece, that'd be great. Excellent. Thank you so much. We've talked an awful lot about survival techniques, since we've just talked about patterns and everything in the family. I think it's important that we readdress, survival techniques. And remember, there's no judgment. They're not good or bad. It's what we had to do to get us to where we are now.
Yeah.
So, and we were talking yesterday that the foundation of us being able to imagine the new you, return to origin, however you would like to see it, is kindness. And why? Because kindness builds a safe space within ourselves. We have to feel safe with us before we can start to venture out and imagine new things.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's important that people feel safe in a circle environment, in a group environment, so they can discuss openly the trauma that they've been through. You have to feel safe within yourself. And that does start with kindness.
Yeah.
Because kindness, consistent kindness, builds trust. You start to trust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You start to trust that you know what's best for you. You know the best way to be kind to you.
Right.
And then with that trust, it all leads to respect.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are kind, trusting, and respectful to yourself, it shows everybody else how you want to be treated.
Right.
If somebody is treating you poorly, if people are treating you poorly, the first place you look is you. Are you treating yourself poorly?
Right. And absolutely. And interestingly, as you're treating yourself kind and, beginning to create that environment, when you're kind to yourself, you'll also begin to become kinder to other people naturally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because how we're feeling, uh, when we interact with people, if people are snipey with me, for example, I'm like, yeah, I know what's going on inside of them right now. Right? There's a sniper battle going on inside. They're feeling in conflict for whatever reason, right? So however people treat us, generally speaking, that's a really good reflection of how they treat themselves. And sometimes that's a really nice thing, and sometimes that's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
So, but it does match, is my point. People aren't walking around being really kind to themselves and then sniping at others, because the energy is too different.
Right.
If they're being passive aggressive with us, they're being passive aggressive with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So with it's funny because I'm hearing a question for you, Kris. As you have grown into this being kind, respectful, and holding integrity for yourself, when you do come across someone who is being snipey, what are some of the best ways for you to handle it? Yes, you just said, yes, that there you have a lot going on in there, but okay, you're moving about your day. You come across someone who is aggressively snipey to you. What do you do?
It's funny because it changes. So I'm not sure I have exactly so many rules as it is. I check in
Mm-hmm.
and I ask my intuition what's the right thing.
Perfect.
What's needed. And sometimes what's needed is just to smile and go about my business.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what's needed is to say, wow, that was a little snipey. Are you okay? Right? Just to bring that to awareness with that compassion, with that kindness. So it's not an accusation. It's an acknowledgement that I see there's something going on with you and I'm here to talk about it if you would like. And sometimes it's like, wow, I so do not appreciate that tone right now. Right? It can be different depending on, because people are in different energies and they need a different a different touch. And that's not the right word, but it's
Mm-hmm.
they need something different to kind of interfere or break into that automatic pattern that's running.
Yes.
And sometimes it's more softness, and sometimes people are kind of, teeth clenched, like really racing through the day, and they need a little bit of more of a brick wall. Like, yo, I'm your brick wall and I'm here to say enough of this.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. And the key thing is you check in. The first thing you do is check in and you ask what's needed.
Yeah.
What's needed. And when when I decided to be kind to myself, it didn't automatically happen.
No.
So, talk about a brick wall. When something would happen, it would trigger that nasty dialogue within myself, and God knows I would speak it out sometimes in anger. Um, I have a dear friend, Miss Jennifer Clark, who would say, "Hey, stop being so mean to my friend."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They'll be like, "Huh?" Yes, and it really snaps you out of that loop because it was such a knee-jerk response to go to that place where I would beat myself up. It was just normal.
Yes.
So
Yes.
to have somebody say, "Hey, take a breath, stop. That's not
Yeah.
okay,"
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
extremely helpful for me.
It's funny, just last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, someone was beating himself up about a project that we knew was going to be a problem, and the person who should have dealt with it, who wasn't dealing with it, was the contractor, wasn't dealing with it, just kept ignoring us. And finally, it was like, well, we're going to have to do something before winter. And so he expressed that he was beating himself up, and I said along those lines, it was like, I understand the temptation, but there's really no benefit in beating yourself up. Like, this summer was already hard because of this. And now, like, let's just be kind to ourselves and let it go and move on. And he actually kind of snarked and said, I can beat myself up if I want to. And I said, fair enough. I mean, you can. But the point of that was that no matter what, I hope this is being conveyed. No matter what the situation is, it's not about me feeling better in that situation. It's about being helpful if I can, if it's needed, because it doesn't feel personal, right? So I can actually laugh at the person who snarks and says, I'm allowed to beat myself up because I'm not in panic. I can hear that and be like, that's pretty funny, right?
I wouldn't recommend laughing as they're saying they want to beat themselves up. You can internally laugh, yes.
A lot of the laughter is on the inside, yeah, because people can
Exactly.
feel like you're laughing at them when you're really not,
No,
right?
not good. Jennifer Clark is back with, we so often say things to ourselves that we would never say to someone we love. That is so true.
Yeah,
Absolutely not. Yes,
yeah.
that was another,
Amen.
would you say those things to your daughter? Absolutely not.
No,
So,
no. Yeah.
yeah, it's been a ride. And it's not to say that, those things don't still happen. It's always a process. It's always a process. And sometimes something will trigger me and it comes right out of the blue.
Yeah, and, it's important, for people to realize that as you start to practice being kind with yourself, one of the things that happens is you become more self-aware.
Mhm.
So you may actually be kinder to yourself, but you're suddenly noticing how mean you are to yourself, or how often you're mean to yourself. And so it can seem like, trying to say, it can get worse seem to get worse
Yeah.
before it gets better, which it's not that it's actually worse. It's just that you're suddenly listening, you're paying attention to how you talk to yourself. And you might be just a little bit mortified once in a while. I
Yes.
certainly was.
Yes. That was exactly what happened. It was like, wow, I had no idea. It was a constant loop running in the background.
Yeah.
It was like color
Yeah.
commentary. That was just
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And it's interesting because, when I declared that I choose peace, that's when I call it the observation deck. That's when I really started to see my behaviors from the observation deck.
Mhm.
And, in the heat of the moment, sometimes I would still choose to continue the beating for
Mhm.
whatever reason, but I was at peace with the fact that I chose to beat myself up. It was a choice.
Right.
It was like the freedom was there for me to make whatever decision I wanted.
Right.
And then I didn't beat myself up for beating myself up. Because
Mhm.
for a long time, I would beat myself up for beating myself up.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So kindness is just a blanket. It's be kind,
Hmm.
be kind, be kind. Because when we choose kindness, we create a safe environment for ourselves where a lot of our innate gifts start to be become present to us. For example, a lot of people would say like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm intuitive," or, "I never get inspired." It's like, no, because the intuition, think, butterflies and like lovely, gentle things, maybe deer and butterflies, right? And you're out there in a war zone beating the crap out of yourself, and you're like, no, they're never there. It's like, well, they're there, but they're not going to come too close because they don't want to get whacked, right? So if we choose the kindness, because if we create a gentle meadow effect inside of ourselves with our words and our feelings, then those parts that are on the fringes waiting for an opportunity to come in and make themselves known and to help you in your life path, in your life journey, they will come forward when it's safe.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely.
And I'm talking symbolically. I'm sorry. I just got this like realize I'm talking symbolically. Like I'm not really thinking we have butterflies and deer, walking around in there in that way. It's just it helps us because our right brain, our spiritual brain, our emotional brain uses symbolism,
Hmm.
so it can help to have pictures and images of what it is that's happening, so that when you find yourself being harsh with yourself, or if you're not sure, you can say, "Well, is this the kind of environment that a deer would wander up and risk touching my hand?" Energetically, is that the kind of environment where something that magnificent could happen? And if no, then the answer is maybe you're not being super kind.
Right. Right. And in hearing in those peaceful moments, when you ask the question, you get the answer.
Yeah.
Whether it's you hear it, you feel it, there is a knowing when you just take that pause and remember to ask the question, the answers always come in whatever way is right and perfect for you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why peace is so important. The peaceful
Mhm.
pause.
Yeah. Yeah, peace is the sort of cultivating the garden of new possibilities and new opportunities. So until we have peace, we can't do anything other than keep repeating the patterns that we've been living in the battleground, and different characters and different locations and different jobs, different situations will show up and we'll be like, oh, it's completely new, right? But until we create a sense of peace within ourselves, it's not new. It's the same patterns running, because peace is where we start to access those higher energies within ourselves that can lead us forward into what is genuinely new.
Mhm.
What is I experience as our destiny.
You dropped the D word, destiny.
Yeah, boom, boom, boom.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right at some point, we've been talking about this. We talked about it in the retreat last weekend, or I guess since the retreat. But there is a point at which you look back. There are points. There are many points um, at which we look back in our lives and we see the things that once seemed really hard and difficult, and woe is me. Why is this happening to me? And we look back and we're like, wow. That person that I met at that time in that really hard situation is now a critical part, a key part of what is unfolding now, all these years later.
Mhm.
Right. And you can see that the situation that happened back then was a necessary ingredient, a necessary thing along the path to what's happening now. It just reframes everything. And you start to feel that we have indeed been walking a path that was to a large degree destined. And yes, we have choice on the path. I mean, my experience is like we can either go with the evolutionary path, go with our guidance and have that experience and learn and grow and have joy and peace and all of those things, or we can fight against
Yes. Yeah. I just laugh because when I see, I talk about a divine plan. There's a divine plan. And because of, the freedom of choice, we pick how rough the terrain is. Me being a stubborn person, um, have picked some pretty difficult lessons to learn under fire. And it wasn't until I was able to sit in that space of, okay, a lot of stuff's happened. Let me look back and see where the lessons were and what did I learn from each of these experiences.
Mhm.
And like we said, taking your inventory, it's about taking what works for you
Right.
and moving forward with it. It removes you. When you start reflecting like that, it takes you from the battlefield to the oasis.
Yeah.
And in the oasis is where you start to imagine everything that is right and perfect for you. And you open your heart, your mind, and your hands to allow it to come to you. You realize you're not chasing anything. You don't
Mhm.
have to go after anything. That when you are in that right space of the vibration, everything is a vibrational match. And I know the difficult lessons I learned because I was in a space of lower vibrational emotions, is what I'll say. So when I was in that space of anger and fear and grief and regret, I kept the universe is like, okay, this is what you want to feel. I'm going to keep sending you experiences to reinforce those feelings,
Yeah.
to reinforce those emotions. So it wasn't until I started to move consciously and treat myself differently and show up differently that I started to experience more joy, love, laughter, and all those, you know, zone 3 and 4 things. I started to trust myself more.
Mm.
That I started to attract experiences that aligned with that vibration and those emotions.
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't feel those things anymore, but I see them from a different perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I just think about when things happen, um, like what I used to think peace was never peace, right? Like I used to think if my world wasn't on fire in that moment, that was peace.
Hmm.
And there was always this like big red button right beside me. And it didn't take much before I would hit the button and woo, it was full on, yeah, yeah, full on chaos, like woe is me, and the whole thing's coming down, and that could last for periods of time.
Hmm.
Uh, and now I was actually thinking about yesterday how now to be in a state of peace, it's not something that's vulnerable. You're not sitting there waiting to push the button. It's like you can actually, like Judy just said, you can stay in that peace and you can actually experience, oh yeah, here's shame coming through, here's guilt coming through, here's fear or anger coming through, and you can acknowledge it without being wrung by it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great, having the awareness of it, I'll be like, oh, all right, does it have something to tell me or is it just something that's moving through? Because
Yeah.
Lord knows there's a lot of it in there.
Yeah, and in the collective, not everything that we experience is our own.
No.
And this can feel a little funky, but we do. Physics proves it out,
Mhm.
right? Not that I expect you to go take a class in it, but quantum physics. I mean, that's what they talk about: is that we're much more energetic receivers and transmitters than we are, meat bags. I mean, that's just the reality is. So we're picking up on some of our own stuff, some of the family stuff, some of the cultural stuff, and then some of humanity's stuff.
Mhm.
So humanity, read a history book. We've had a tough go. A lot of pretty traumatic things have happened to humanity. And so sometimes as we're getting further and further into establishing that peace, we can have things come up that are from, old trauma that doesn't have anything to do with us personally. Or, I don't know, maybe it was a past life. I don't know. But I do realize that when it comes up, I can be like, wow, that's pretty powerful. And okay, I'm willing to let that go. I've learned personally not to dive in and need to write a story about it because I don't want to keep it here.
Mhm.
Right? If something comes up that feels like really dark and hard, I'm not like, oh, let's sit down and write a novel. Though I know some people do like, the Stephen King novels. I used to read a lot of them, actually.
Mhm.
Um, but the point is that we don't have to know. So when you're feeling angry or, afraid or sad or whatever it is, sometimes it's helpful to talk about what you're feeling and why. But a lot of times it's enough to acknowledge the feeling and say, thank you for being on your way out.
Thank you for your service.
Yes. Yes. Because if we do grab onto it and start, because this is what happens culturally, right? It's like, I'm sad. Okay, why are you sad? You have to have a reason. The reality is most of the time we don't know why we're sad. I
Mhm.
mean, we can look at a situation, maybe there's a person standing next to me. Oh, it must be Judy's fault that I'm sad because she's standing right here, right? That doesn't make it true. And if I decided that I wanted to make a study out of my sadness, then look how that's going to put my focus into more and more sadness, more and more on experiencing sadness. If we don't want to do that, which most of us don't, it's better to say, okay, the sadness is here. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to work with it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to acknowledge it, and then I'm going to thank it. Yes, exactly as you said, on the way out. I'm not going to hold it here and define myself by it.
What is the most kind way for me to work with this sadness?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mic drop. Boom. Yeah. I need a mic so I can drop it when she
Which,
said such things.
we are here at the end of our time. So we just want to leave you with, in imagining the new you, the first thing you must do, evaluate your relationship with yourself.
Hmm.
Make the commitment to being kind to you and see how that opens your doors.
Yeah. See how
You can
that unfolds your heart petals.
exactly. You can find us at www.masterfulu.com. That's www.masterfulu.com. There are 3 levels of engagement. Of course, you have the show here. We have workshops and 12-week programs. So I think this has been enlightening. Not only for me, it's a great reminder for me to journey back through and help me move forward, allowing because I always say I'm not very creative, which is limiting, opening my mind to allowing the universe to bring me whatever is for my highest and greatest good.
Yeah. Amen, sister.
So thank you all for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week. This is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. Thank you, Kris.